a special train departed from New York at 2 p.m. and reached Chicago after 8 hours. Along the way, many people were killed, several were injured, and some wandered off in different directions. At 10 a.m., when James opened his eyes on the cold ground of the camp, he saw a turbulent sea of men, women, and children around him. His ability to think became even weaker. He stared at the murky sky for a long time, motionless. Although there was noise everywhere in the camp, it was as if James's ears were closed. He could hear nothing. Anyone looking at him would think he was lost in deep thought, but his senses were numb, and his entire being seemed suspended in a void. As he kept staring aimlessly at the cloudy sky, his gaze collided with the sun. The bright light pierced through his being, awakening him. A series of images flashed through his mind: looting, fire, chaos, the station, gunshots, the night, and Mary. James suddenly stood up and began frantically searching through the sea of people around him. For 3 hours he roamed the camp, calling out, "Mary, Mary!" But he could not find his young, only daughter. Everywhere there was chaos. Some were searching for their children, some for their mothers, wives, or daughters. Exhausted, James sat down and tried to recall when and where he had been separated from Mary. But his thoughts kept returning to the image of Mary's mother's lifeless body, her intestines spilling out. Beyond that, he could think of nothing else. Mary's mother had died in front of James's eyes. But where was Mary? Before dying, her mother had told him, "Leave me and take Mary. Run away quickly." Mary had been with him, both running, barefoot. Her scarf had fallen, and when James tried to pick it up, Mary had shouted, "Dad, leave it!" But he had picked it up anyway. As he recalled this, he looked at his coat pocket, reached in, and pulled out a piece of cloth. It was Mary's scarf. But where was Mary? James strained his tired mind but couldn't reach any conclusion. Had he brought Mary with him to the station? Had she boarded the train with him? When the train was stopped and the attackers stormed in, was he unconscious? Did they take Mary away? Questions swirled in James's mind, but there were no answers. He needed help, but everyone around him needed help too. James wanted to cry, but his eyes did not cooperate. His tears had vanished somewhere. 6 days later, when he had regained some of his senses, James met a group of 8 young volunteers who had a truck and guns. James blessed them and described, "Mary, fair complexion, very beautiful, resembles her mother more than me, around 17 years old, my only daughter. Please find her. May God bless you." The volunteers assured him with great determination that if Mary was alive, they would find her within a few days. The 8 volunteers risked their lives going to New York and rescuing many men, women, and children, bringing them to safety. 10 days passed, but they could not find Mary. One day, while traveling to New York in their truck, the volunteers saw a girl near Chicago on the roadside. Hearing the truck's sound, she panicked and started running. The volunteers stopped the truck and chased her into a field where they caught her. She was very beautiful, with a prominent mole on her right cheek. One of them asked gently, "Don't be afraid. Is your name Mary?" The girl turned pale and didn't respond, but when they reassured her, her fear subsided, and she admitted she was James's daughter, Mary. The volunteers comforted her, gave her food and milk, and seated her in the truck. One of them gave her his coat because she felt uneasy without a scarf, repeatedly trying unsuccessfully to cover her chest with her arms. Several days passed, but James received no news of Mary. He spent his days visiting various camps and offices, searching for her. At night, he prayed fervently for the volunteers' success. One day, James saw the volunteers in their truck at the camp. He ran to them and asked, "Sons, did you find my Mary?" They all replied in unison, "We will find her," and drove off. That evening, near the camp, there was some commotion. 4 men were carrying something. James followed them, and learned they had found an unconscious girl near the railway tracks and brought her to the hospital. James followed them to the hospital and stood outside for a while, leaning against a wooden pole. Then he slowly went inside. The room was empty except for a stretcher with a body on it. James approached it with small steps. Suddenly the room lit up, and he saw a mole on the pale face of the body. He screamed, "Mary!" The doctor who had turned on the light asked, "What is it?" All James could say was, I am her father." The doctor looked at the body on the stretcher, checked her pulse, and told James, "Open the window." Mary's lifeless body stirred. With trembling hands, she untied her trouser string and lowered it. Overjoyed, James shouted, "She's alive! My daughter is alive!" The doctor, drenched in sweat from head to toe, stood frozen.